Welcome to Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something I think, well, pretty much everyone experiences at some point. It's that feeling of repeating the same mistakes, right? Getting stuck in the same old patterns, even when you know they're not working for you.
Absolutely. It's that déjà vu feeling, isn't it?
Exactly. Like you find yourself in another relationship that feels suspiciously like the last one. Or facing the same kind of frustration at work, maybe making the same kinds of decisions that always seem to lead down a familiar, not-so-great path.
That feeling of tripping over the same stone again and again. It's a classic human experience.
It really is. So our mission today is to unpack why this happens. What are the psychological gears turning behind the scenes? And more importantly, what can we actually do about it? How can we break free?
And it's important to say this isn't just, bad luck or coincidence. Usually,
Right.
it's often rooted in some really deep behavioral patterns, things happening in our brains, sometimes consciously, but often, very often, unconsciously. It's almost like a signal.
A signal. How so?
Yeah, like your psyche is trying to tell you something. This repetition, this pattern, it means something inside needs attention. It needs to be understood, maybe integrated, maybe healed somehow.
Okay, that leads right to the big question, doesn't it?
Okay.
If we see the negative results, we feel the pain or the frustration these patterns cause, why is it so unbelievably hard to just stop?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a paradox. We know better, but we keep doing it. So that's what we're really digging into today. By the end of this, hopefully you'll have a clearer view of your own patterns, maybe some surprising insights into how your mind works, and importantly, some actual tools to move forward differently, with more intention.
Definitely. It's a fascinating area.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this. What are some of the big psychological reasons we get stuck in these loops? I know there are quite a few layers to this.
There really are. One of the foundational ideas, going back a bit, is this concept of the unconscious repetition compulsion. It sounds complicated, but the basic idea is that we unconsciously try to, resolve painful past experiences by repeating them.
Repeating them? That sounds counterintuitive. Why would we repeat something painful?
Well, it's not a conscious choice like, I think I'll suffer this way again. It's more like the psyche is trying to rerun an old scenario, almost hoping for a different outcome this time. Like maybe this time it can be fixed or healed.
Okay, can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine someone who, say, felt really unheard or dismissed as a child.
Right.
They might find themselves again and again drawn to partners or situations where they feel unheard. Not because they enjoy it, obviously, but because there's this deep, unconscious drive to finally change that original script, to finally be heard in a way they weren't back then.
Wow, so it's like trying to heal an old wound.
Exactly. But here's the catch. You're often trying to do it with the same dynamics, the same tools that caused the hurt in the first place. It's a real bind.
That phrase, using the same tools that caused the initial pain, that really hits home. It shows how subtle these pulls can be, running our lives without us even realizing it. So our attempts to fix things can actually keep the problem going.
Precisely. And that connects directly to another key idea, emotional familiarity bias. Our brains, fundamentally, they like what's known, what's predictable, even if what's known is, dysfunctional or painful.
Familiarity equals safety, even if it's bad.
To the unconscious mind, yes, often. If you grew up in a chaotic environment or one that was emotionally distant, that becomes your normal. So later in life, similar environments or relationships, even though they cause distress, might feel oddly safe or right on some deep unconscious level.
Wow.
Because it's familiar. The unfamiliar, even if it's potentially much healthier, feels threatening, uncertain. The brain often picks predictability, even painful predictability, over the unknown.
That's a really startling idea, that we might cling to painful situations just because they feel familiar. So how do we even begin to challenge that? Does it mean fundamentally changing what feels safe inside?
It does require a fundamental shift, yeah. But it's also about recognizing what keeps us locked in. And that often involves our defense mechanisms, things like avoidance, denial, rationalization.
One of the mental gymnastics we do.
Exactly. These are like shields our mind puts up to avoid uncomfortable truths about ourselves or our patterns. We tell ourselves, oh, it wasn't really a mistake, it was just bad luck. Or, this time will be different, I'm sure of it, even when history suggests otherwise.
Or, I can handle this, even though you've crashed and burned trying to handle this exact thing before.
Precisely. These are all ways we protect ourselves from seeing our own role in the pattern.
And then there are limiting beliefs, right? Those stories we tell ourselves.
Oh, absolutely critical. If you hold deep down beliefs like, I don't deserve better, or I'm just someone who always fails, or love is always painful, you'll often subconsciously act in ways that actually confirm those beliefs.
Like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is. You end up creating the very reality you fear, proving your negative belief right, even though it causes you pain. And one more, perhaps slightly stranger one. For some people, there's an unconscious pull towards drama or chaos.
Really?
It's complex, but sometimes that intensity, that emotional roller coaster, can provide a feeling of being alive, a kind of excitement. They might confuse that intensity with genuine vitality or passion, even if it completely lacks peace or stability. The drama itself becomes a kind of hidden payoff.
It's a lot to take in, these deep, often hidden forces just driving our behavior.
Okay.
Okay, so beyond those core psychological reasons, I know Carl Jung had a really profound way of looking at this too. He saw these repetitions differently, didn't he? Almost like messages.
Yes, exactly. Jung offered this incredibly rich, complementary perspective. He suggested that these recurring patterns aren't just glitches, they're meaningful. They're messages from our psyche, signals that we haven't quite managed to decipher yet.
So not just problems to be fixed, but communications to be understood.
Precisely. Jung saw the unconscious mind, this vast hidden realm of repressed memories, emotions, potentials, as being like an intricate inner labyrinth. And we keep finding ourselves back in the same spots in that labyrinth, facing similar challenges, until we finally understand what's really going on within us. It's not punishment, it's a persistent invitation to wake up, to become more aware.
And he had that idea about the outer world reflecting the inner, right?
Yes. Absolutely central to his thinking. The idea that our external experiences, the constant betrayals, the job frustrations, feeling overlooked, aren't just random events happening to us. They're often direct reflections, mirrors of our internal world.
Mirrors.
Yeah, they're showing us parts of ourselves, aspects that need our attention, that need to be integrated into our conscious awareness.
So if I keep experiencing, say, betrayal, Jung might suggest looking inside myself for a what?
Yeah.
Something related to betrayal within me.
Potentially, yes. Or perhaps parts of yourself you've betrayed or neglected. The key is that the external situation holds a mirror up to an internal dynamic. And the challenge is learning to read that mirror.
That's a huge shift in perspective, instead of just blaming the situation or the other person.
Right. The biggest blind spot is often believing the problem is entirely out there. Jung would say the unconscious doesn't speak in plain English. It uses a different language. The language of symbols, dreams, gut feelings, intuition, and even our suffering.
So the suffering itself is part of the message.
Often, yes. Every challenge, every repeated mistake is a potent clue. It's an opportunity to pause and ask, okay, what is this really telling me about me? What part of myself needs to be seen or accepted or changed?
It's like the universe keeps nudging us, and if we ignore the whisper, it starts to shout.
That's a great way to put it. And often the core of what needs attention relates to what Jung called the shadow.
Ah, the shadow. That sounds ominous.
It sounds it, but it isn't inherently bad or evil. The shadow is simply all the parts of ourselves, our fears, yes, but also maybe our desires, certain personality traits, even positive qualities sometimes that we've repressed or denied, things that don't fit the image we want to project to the world or even to ourselves.
Yeah, so parts we hide.
Exactly. And Jung's insight was that the more we ignore or push down the shadow, the more power it gains. It doesn't just go away, it tends to erupt in our lives, often manifesting as those uncontrollable situations, the toxic relationships, the self-sabotaging habits. It's not trying to punish us, though. It's desperately calling out for integration. It wants to be acknowledged, brought into the light.
So the things we most want to hide end up controlling us from behind the curtain. That's profound.
It really is, and this ties directly into another key Jungian concept. Projections.
Projections, like seeing things in others.
Yes, seeing our own unacknowledged traits in others, we unconsciously project them outwards. So if you have a really strong negative reaction to someone you see as, say, incredibly selfish or arrogant, Jung would suggest that it's worth exploring whether those qualities, perhaps in a hidden or undeveloped form, might actually reside within you, within your own shadow.
Oof, that could be tough to swallow.
It can be. But becoming aware of our projections is incredibly empowering because it means we can stop blaming everyone else.
Yeah.
We can take back the projected energy. We realize, this strong reaction is telling me something about me. It shifts the power back to us.
It moves from blame to self-discovery. And responsibility.
Precisely. And this whole process, this journey of acknowledging the shadow, retrieving projections, becoming more whole and authentic, that's what Jung called individuation. It's the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are.
Individuation, I like that. It's about becoming an individual, whole, and integrated.
Exactly. Accepting and unifying all parts of yourself, the conscious, the unconscious, the light, the shadow, the parts you like, the parts you don't. So instead of just complaining about partners who don't value you, the individuating question becomes, okay, what part of me doesn't value myself? Where am I buying into the belief that I don't deserve better?
It's challenging, absolutely, but incredibly liberating.
Taking ownership of the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. And just briefly, Jung also talked about synchronicity, those uncanny, meaningful coincidences.
Right, like thinking of someone and they suddenly call, or finding the perfect book just when you need it.
Exactly. Jung saw these not as mere chance, but as moments where the inner world and the outer world align in a meaningful way. It's like the universe conspiring, or maybe just reflecting your inner process, offering guidance or confirmation. And one last insight from Jung here. Often, fear itself can be a signpost.
Fear, how so? If something genuinely scares you, a path you're considering, an insight you've had, it might actually be pointing towards a major growth opportunity. It doesn't necessarily mean stop. It might mean this is important, pay attention. This is where transformation lies.
Okay, so we've got the deep psychological roots, the unconscious drives, the Jungian messages. But let's get practical for a moment. How do our brains actually learn these patterns in the first place? And how do we keep reinforcing them day in, day out?
Yeah, that's crucial, understanding the how, because that's where we can intervene. So basically, we learn and maintain behaviors, including those pesky, repetitive ones, in a few key ways. First up is modeling.
Learning by watching others.
Exactly. We learn by example, by imitation. We pick things up from our parents, our friends, even from media, often without even realizing it. Our brains are constantly absorbing information, building these mental frameworks or schemas about how the world works and how we should behave in it. We soak it up like sponges.
So our environment really shapes our scripts for behavior.
Massively. Then there's operant conditioning. This is about learning through consequences. Basically, if you do something and it leads to a pleasant outcome, even a very small immediate one, you're more likely to do it again.
Like getting a reward.
Yes, or even just avoiding something unpleasant. Think about a teenager who tries a cigarette. Maybe the cigarette itself isn't pleasant initially, but if they get approval or feel included by their peers.
The social reward.
Right. That immediate social acceptance reinforces the act of smoking, making it more likely to happen again, even despite the long-term health risks. The brain latches onto that immediate positive consequence. It's always scanning for payoffs.
Makes sense. Those little immediate rewards or reliefs can be really powerful drivers.
They really can. And the third main way is classical conditioning. This is about associations. Your brain learns to link a neutral cue, maybe a particular song, a specific smell, even a time of day with a strong emotion or experience.
Like Pavlov's dogs.
Kind of, yeah. So later on, that originally neutral cue can trigger the associated feeling all by itself. You know how a certain song might instantly take you back to a wonderful memory, making you feel warm and happy even if you're currently stuck in traffic?
Oh, totally. Music does that all the time.
Right. The song was neutral, but it got paired with a powerful positive experience. Now, the song alone triggers those feelings. And this can work for negative patterns too. If a certain place or person or situation might trigger old feelings of anxiety or craving, pulling you back into a familiar loop.
So it's not just what we do, but the cues and associations our brain makes around what we do.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the power of reinforcers. This is so key. Behaviors, good, bad, indifferent, they only persist because they are being reinforced in some way. There's always a consequence, a payoff, even if it's subtle or seems negative on the surface. If there were truly no reinforcement, the behavior would eventually just fade away, extinguish.
You wouldn't keep doing something if there was absolutely nothing in it for you.
Exactly. You wouldn't keep telling jokes if literally no one ever laughed, right? You'd stop.
Yeah, probably pretty quickly.
So these reinforcers come in different flavors. Negative reinforcers aren't punishments. They're about removing something unpleasant. So the behavior is reinforced because it makes the bad thing go away.
Like taking an aspirin removes a headache.
Perfect example. Or fleeing a situation that makes you anxious brings immediate relief. Smoking might temporarily reduce feelings of stress. Drinking might temporarily remove social awkwardness. The removal of the unpleasant feeling reinforces the behavior.
Got it. Removal of bad reinforcement.
Right. And then you have positive reinforcers, which are about adding something pleasant. This is the more obvious kind, material rewards like money or gifts, activity rewards like going out or having a nice bath, or social rewards like praise, affection, or a simple compliment.
Okay. Adding good reinforcement.
Exactly. So a really powerful exercise for you, the listener, is to think about a pattern you want to change. Ask yourself, what's the hidden reinforcer? What subtle payoff, what small relief or pleasure am I actually getting from this behavior, even if I hate the overall consequences? Identifying that hidden reinforcement is often the key to unlocking the pattern.
Okay, this is all incredibly insightful. We understand the why, the deep psychodynamics, the messages, and the how, the learning, the reinforcement. So the million-dollar question, how do we actually start to break these cycles? What can we realistically do?
Right, let's get into the strategies. And the absolute foundation, the starting point for any real change is self-awareness. You have to be able to see the pattern.
Just noticing it isn't enough.
Noticing is the first step, but it's about actively recognizing the repetition as it's happening or even as the urge arises. That conscious awareness is the doorway. And then you need to dig deeper. Commit to identifying the specific causes for you. Why does this particular pattern show up in your life? What triggers it?
So becoming a detective of your own behavior.
Exactly. It requires dedicating real time to self-reflection, introspection, getting curious about your inner world, your thoughts, your feelings, your history.
And that can be tough, looking honestly at ourselves.
It absolutely can be, which is why the next piece is so vital. Adopt self-compassion.
Yeah.
Seriously, when you catch yourself falling into the old pattern, resist the urge to beat yourself up. That, how could I be so stupid again? Voice.
Yeah, that voice is loud sometimes.
It is. Try shifting to something kinder, more curious, like, okay, there it is again, interesting. What part of me needed this right now? What's the underlying feeling or unmet need here? Something in me is still hurting or trying to get my attention. This changes everything. It moves you from shame to gentle exploration.
That feels much more constructive.
Yeah.
From judgment to curiosity.
It really is. And a very practical tool that flows from this is to consciously pause and reflect before acting. When you feel that familiar pull, that urge towards the old pattern, whether it's sending that text, taking that job, reacting in that same way, create even just a tiny pause, a breath.
It's a moment to interrupt the autopilot.
Exactly. In that pause, ask yourself, okay, wait. Does this feel familiar? Is this coming from an old wound, an old script? Or is this coming from my conscious present-day self choosing freely? That micro moment of choice is where your power lies.
And recognizing you don't have to go through this alone, right?
Absolutely crucial. Seek support. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, a family member, a mentor, or consider professional help like a therapist or a coach. Getting an outside perspective can be invaluable. They can often see the invisible threads, the patterns that are hard to spot from the inside.
Fresh eyes can make a huge difference.
Definitely. And also, be realistic. Set realistic goals. Don't try to change everything overnight. That's a recipe for overwhelm and giving up. Focus on small, gradual, achievable steps.
Yeah.
Celebrate the small wins. Consistent effort over time is what builds real change.
Progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And related to that is learning from mistakes. When you do slip up, and you probably will, that's part of the process. Don't just write it off as a failure. Analyze it. What happened? What were the triggers? What were the consequences? What can you learn from this specific instance to do differently next time? Turn setbacks into data.
Use it as feedback, not failure.
Precisely. And going back to the deeper work, really commit to integrating all parts of yourself. Remember the shadow. Don't keep pushing parts of yourself away. Accept them. Explore those intense emotions, anger, jealousy, fear, sadness. They're not enemies, they're messengers. They might be showing you boundaries you need to set, desires you haven't acknowledged, parts of your own strength you've disowned. Integration is key.
So leaning into the difficult feelings, not running away.
Yes. See them as doorways to understanding. And there are practical tools to help with this deeper connection. Journaling is fantastic. Just write freely about the patterns, the feelings, the decisions. Ask yourself questions on paper. What's the common theme here? What am I really afraid of? It helps untangle things.
Getting it out of your head and onto the page.
Yeah. Also, pay attention to symbols in dreams. Notice recurring images or themes that pop up in your dreams or even in waking life. Your unconscious often speaks in symbols. What might that recurring image be trying to tell you? And for those who want to go deeper, exploring techniques like active imagination can be powerful. It's a way of consciously dialoguing with the images and figures that arise from your unconscious.
Those sound like really powerful ways to connect inwards.
They can be. And finally, 2 crucial mindsets. Cultivate patience. Real growth takes time. It's often 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Be patient with yourself. Every bit of awareness, every small choice made differently counts. And importantly, learn to embrace discomfort and resistance. Change is often uncomfortable. Breaking old habits feels weird, even scary.
Because the old way is familiar, even if it's bad.
Exactly. Remember Jung's wisdom. What you resist persists, but what you accept transforms. Don't fight the discomfort, acknowledge it. Understand that the resistance itself is often a sign that you're on the edge of real change. The suffering isn't the enemy, it's often the teacher, showing you where you need to grow, where you're disconnected from your true self. Leaning into that edge is where the magic happens.
Wow. So putting this all together, what does this really mean for you listening right now? It means that finding yourself repeating the same mistakes isn't some kind of personal failing or a curse. It's actually an invitation.
A profound invitation, yeah. From your deeper self calling you to grow, to become more conscious, more whole. By understanding these layers, the psychological patterns, the unconscious messages, the learned behaviors, you genuinely gain the power to choose a different path. You're not doomed to repeat the past.
You can become the author of a new chapter.
Absolutely. And this journey, this process of self-discovery and change, it isn't about reaching some impossible state of perfection. It's about becoming the conscious creator of your reality, step by step. Every time you bravely face one of those shadows, or you listen to that quiet inner voice of intuition, or you make that conscious choice to let go of an old pattern, even a small one, you're doing more than just changing your own life. You're creating ripples. You're impacting the world around you in ways you might not even realize.
That's a really hopeful and empowering way to look at it.
Yeah.
We really hope this deep dive has given you some valuable new perspectives, maybe some aha moments about your own patterns, and hopefully the courage to start taking those first steps toward breaking free.
Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to our next deep dive.